Hello and welcome to CarMiZa Trunk Details Part 37. This will definitely be a continuation of the last video, still working on the same content. So let's get right to it. In the last video, I did the wiring through the trunk arms. This is the welded gas line that is in the trunk arm. And this morning I woke up and was a bit concerned about the size of this plug and being able to fit all of this underneath the rear deck. So let me show you where I'm going to be placing this. Underneath the rear deck, there is this hole and the plug will go up and tuck inside of here, but it's a tight fit. So I am definitely concerned about all of that. So what I think I'm going to do in this video, and if you recall in the last video, I only had one pair of plugs and I ordered a new set. That's not going to be here till later this afternoon and I want to get to work. So my first order of operations is I'm going to pull the wiring back through the tube and I'm going to reverse the way it goes so that this end is then over here. That's going to then allow me to properly take this and get this end basically all set up and make sure that that wire tucks in there. Not only tucks in there, but that we've got enough slack so that, you know, this is going to move freely and do what it needs to do. All right, so I got that reversed, piece of cake. The wire moves real nice in the tube, so that wasn't a problem. I also have a plan. So inside the car, I'm going to tuck it up on the opposite side. I'll show you how that goes. So the next thing I want to do is get this plug mounted to the factory wire harness, which I will show you here. So this, again, in the last video, if you recall, I did a little surgery here in the factory harness. This is the piece that goes into the trunk arm. So what I'm going to do at this point is get this all cleaned up. I will put Tessa tape on this. We'll put the connector on the end and we'll prepare to get the connector mounted in the rear deck area so that I can unplug the arm, the harness at the arm and be able to remove it. I'm going to be doing time lapse, and shout out to my buddy Michael in New York. Hope you're well, my friend. I will make sure to put music on the time lapse this time. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, and there's our harness all cleaned up, retaped. Again, just as BMW did from the factory. And if you're not aware, I redid the entire car. Every inch of wiring in the car was redone in the same fashion. So cleaned, you know, everything cleaned up, and then new Tessa tape. I even put a drop of super glue on the end just to keep it from unraveling. If you followed along in the last video, there are two wires, the white and blue wire coming off the factory harness, that I will need to extend and run across the top of the rear deck. Those are going to go into the other trunk arm. So this one is good to go. I also talked about these Deutsch connectors, which I am an absolute fan of. If you're not using these and you're using something else, they're a couple of bucks more, but man, I'll tell you, I am blown away by the quality and the engineering and just the build quality of these things. Very impressive. So at this point, I'm actually waiting on Amazon again, and I've got blue primary wire, but not white. So I'm waiting for that. I want to extend that, and then what we're going to do is this harness will get zip tied to this other factory harness up here, and then our socket is going to go in that area. One other quick thing too, if you watched in the last video, when I built this plug, I made an inventory of each of the different wires and which hole it went into. These are numbered. I will tell you, you saw me wearing glasses. I don't normally wear glasses, but the writing is tiny on this plug. So I did the same thing, obviously, using this diagram to do what you just saw in the car side. Okay, it is the next day, Sunday, and my primary wire was delivered by Amazon. Now I'm still waiting on some tan heat shrink and also some tan braided nylon loom. We'll get to that later. So not going to hold me up. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and extend the blue and white wires. You can see I've got my heat shrink there ready to go. Everything is going to get soldered. For anybody interested, that is the soldering iron I use. I think it was $50 or $60 off Amazon. That was good for the, I think, almost 400 connections that I made in the car, redoing all the factory wiring. So good little unit, and does a great job. All right, our blue and wire is extended, soldered, heat shrinked, and again, I've got my tested tape, probably a foot or more longer than I need it to be. I figured this was easier to do this way. I'm going to run it on the rear deck, get it all in place, and then trim it to length, and then we'll install that plug. There's again the other plug for the driver's side. All right, the wiring part of the car and the inside for this is done. So you can see the second loom right there, and as it goes up, you can see it go into the rear, underneath that rear deck, and that's where the plug goes. You can see the blue and white wire coming around here, zip tied at least every 6 inches, and then going into this side. All right, so there's my plug hanging down. That's all the length I need. That's just on the car side. Just got to be able to get to it to unplug it, and there's the passenger side as well. So car side wiring for this whole thing is a wrap. Now onto the trunk arms and finishing up the trunk lid. All right, the next step is I'm going to work on the car side of the passenger arm, which is right here. So if you recall, on this one, I reversed the plug, right? I'm effectively going to do the same thing. However, I'm actually going to replace these wires because I want to go probably 6 inches longer. You'll see why. I've already kind of laid out and planned out what I'm going to be doing here, and I'm putting the plugs in a different location because I want to use the clips inside of here. So kind of long story short, I need to extend the harness. I'm going to be extending this one also, these wires on the lid side as well. So I've got the factory wires. I've already cut it basically off the harness under the lid, and I'll extend those about 6 inches. So my next part again is going to be effectively redo this. I don't mind the fact that I kind of wasted 6 of these pins. I can buy new pins, and I've got plenty. So it is what it is. That was something that I did not foresee with the design, but all good. So I'll get busy on that. Okay, passenger trunk arm, that one. Done-ish. So as you can see, I ran new wires, and I pulled the Deutsch connector apart and was able to put the new pins in and reuse the connector. These things, again, are amazing. If you didn't watch my last video, I went into some more detail on how they operate, but a huge fan of these things. So again, notice where I've got it kind of paired up the same way on the passenger and driver's side. Also notice the blue and white wires. I went ahead and used the factory OEM wires for this because they're much thinner insulation and just a little bit slightly smaller gauge than this primary wire that I have. You can see it's got a really fat insulation on it, and I wanted to make sure I can easily pull the wires in the tube just to be safe. So that part is good. So at this point, the next step is going to be to extend these 12 wires by about 6 inches. I've got a chunk of the factory piece to do that. And then I will extend the blue and white here. And then once we get those set, we'll go on to the next part. But let's go ahead and get into some soldering. All right, soldering complete. I don't know if you guys noticed in the time lapse, but I was kind of fighting with my soldering gun. My tip is getting pretty beat. I don't think I tinned it properly when I put it away the last time, and it was having a heck of a time. So I used some tip tinner and even some steel wool to try to, or whatever this stuff is, I forget what it's called, but to basically try to clean up the tip. I also like a tinning flux. I use this stuff here. Had really good luck with it. And then if you're interested, I'm using a lead-free rosin core. I forget what gauge this is. But just a standard, straightforward solder. And by the way, too, when I solder, I know there's a million different approaches, and many people will claim what's best. I do where the two wires are basically on top of each other and solder together that way. I've done thousands of connections like these, and knock on wood, never had one came loose. After I'm done soldering, I'll go through, double check to make sure they're really good. Address if I have any sharp spots, because I don't want it to come through the heat shrink and cause a short. Double check all that, make sure it's good. Then I'll get my heat shrink on there and get it all cleaned up and finished. So let me go ahead and get that done. All right, everything's done with the wire extensions. For the heat shrink, I use a 3-to-1 ratio. And it has an adhesive in it as well. If anyone's interested, I can give you the link for this stuff I got off Amazon. With the adhesive, it's nice. I think it just helps to better seal it as well. So that is done. I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tape these up. I will be doing a loom, I believe, over these after, which I can de-pin this and run the loom over. But I'm going to go ahead and get them taped up. All right, got those taped up. I used the thin tape because I need it to kind of bend a little bit. That's kind of the natural shape of the way it goes. It kind of goes up underneath the trunk lid, or excuse me, the rear deck, like that. I also pulled the wires out a little bit further than they needed to be, wrapped the tape, and then pulled back from the other side. So the tape is basically hiding everything. I also have this. A braided sleeving, and I'm waiting on some heat shrink to come. So this is just more functional than anything, just to keep everything together, but I'll likely cover it up with this stuff and then some beige heat shrink. I might even cut the kitty hair back a little bit to expose the tube and go right over the top of the tube with the heat shrink. So we'll deal with that a little later. And I think next I'm going to do the connectors at that end. If you're a loyal follower of CarMiZa, first off, thank you. And if you are, you know that in the last video, I kind of mapped out the pin assignments inside these plugs. The plugs are numbered, each hole. And this way, I just ensure all the way throughout all 4 connections, everything is done correctly. All right. Plugs on, all taped up. So other than the loom on those wires, the wiring in the trunk arms is done. So I do realize there's a bit of a bump here from all the heat shrink. I'm totally fine with that. Well, anytime I've got something like this, I'll also go bigger with the tape. I run a little bit wider tape in that section. And I've already checked. I am going to have to kind of carve out a little bit on the underside of the trunk lid panel. It's like 2 inches thick in that area, so plenty of room, and I'll just get in there and Dremel it out a little bit just to make sure this doesn't get squeezed or pinched. So, all right, on to the next part. All right, it's a couple of nights later. I was busy last night with some other stuff around the house and back to working on MiZa. So at this point, what I want to do is wrap up all the stuff on the car side for the trunk arm wiring. So what I'm going to do is, this is the best thing I can come up with. If anyone in the comments has a better idea for this, let me know. What I need to do is secure the plug to the car, right? So as we know, the plug is kind of hanging down right now. The objective here is I install the trunk lid. I've got that plug. I plug the other part in, and then I tuck this up in here, strategically placed such that I've got the right amount of slack and everything goes good with the movement of the trunk arm. But I need to be able to keep that in place, but also be able to pull it down when I need to. I don't really want to go with a mechanical fastener through here because this will all be carpeted. So my best guess right now is to apply a bunch of Velcro up here. I'm going to do a large piece on the car side, and then I'll cut a smaller piece that fits the plug itself. And then basically this will be the car, this will be the plug, and I'll be able to place it. It's a heavy duty industrial grade Velcro. So I think it's going to hold fine, but I couldn't come up with a better way. I'll go ahead and clean it first with some isopropyl and then get that all set up. All right, kind of tight quarters here, but that's what it looks like. I've got my Velcro on the back side of the plug, and I also have it up inside here, and I'll go ahead and tuck it. All right, super tight quarters here. I'm all scrunched in the trunk. So there's the wiring. If I lower the trunk arm, so right now it's in the up position. If I lower the trunk arm, to where it will be. I got the strut disconnected. That's in its final resting place. I made sure that there's plenty of slack behind here. There's a little tab here, but that's not in the way. And try to get the light in there. You can see my wire is okay. And when I open the trunk lid, it'll look like that. I'll show you guys, I got some loom and some other stuff I was gonna put over the top of that, the tape, but I think I have a better idea, maybe. Give me a second, I'll show you that. Sorry, one other detail I wanted to point out. This hole, the carpet will roll into that hole, so it'll kind of go over that, that edge. So there, again, there's like zero, wanted to obviously make sure there's zero chance of any kind of risk of this getting pinched or bound up. And I'm very confident it will be good. Okay, here's the passenger side. That went really quick, easy. I've got my Velcro up underneath this piece, and I'll do the same thing and tuck it up there. All right, this one, it's just, obviously right now, it's just temporarily up there. I will pull the plug a little bit further over, but you can basically see where the harness goes. I think, again, everything is good there. All right, still not totally in love with this Velcro idea, but it's working. The other thing I did was I wrapped some of the thin Tessa tape around here, and just because the Velcro is wanting to pull up, this stuff, the hook and loop is super, super strong. And when I've got it in there on that flat area, I've got to try to pull it across, and it's kind of difficult. So that's not the issue. The issue is that the Velcro was coming off the plug. So I wrapped some tape around it, super glued the end of the tape, and I tested it, and it's easy enough to get in and out, but strong enough to hold in place. So unless I come up with something better, that'll be the solution. I did the same thing on the other side. So at this point, we're ready to grab the trunk lid and finalize all the wiring in that area. All right, very glad that the car side stuff here is all complete, and I'm happy with it. I just played around a little bit more with putting the harnesses, the plugs in and out with the Velcro, and it's good. Again, I'll see if I can come up with a better plan. And if you guys have any ideas, please let me know. That was kind of bothering me. That was a big kind of a stress to make sure everything is good. There's no chance of it getting pinched, so on and so forth. So now we're going to go ahead and finish up everything on the lid side. So if you recall, a little earlier in this video, I extended the wires. Initially, they were only coming to about here. That's because, again, I had to pull them a little bit further down this way for the car side to make sure I had plenty of slack. In doing so, again, I knew I was going to kind of a big bump here. There is plenty of room, again, where a little bit later, I will kind of carve out the underside of the trunk lid cover to accommodate this. It's just a little bit I need to be able to take out to do that. I've marked with tape kind of where these plugs, the joints are gonna go on both sides. So now what I'll do is remove the arms, and I'll know that this is kind of gonna be my starting point. Notice too where this is kind of a cavity here, so it's kind of built up. So I'll use a very short screw, stainless steel screw obviously, to mount my bracket clip, and then I'm going to be able to lock the bracket in place. And then from there, I'll rewire the remaining wiring that's here. And we've got some stuff that's kind of messed up, and yeah, there's a decent amount of work to do. So let's get to it. All right, so here's the victim. This is the wiring harness I'm starting with. So couple things. The blue and white wire, if you recall, which go to the trunk release solenoid, the heavier gauge, those have to come in from the passenger side. I also, I got to be consistent. I'm very particular about this, and it's got this plastic loom, which is getting very brittle because of its age. I'm going to take this off. I'm going to undo all of the tape. I'm going to really clean the wires as you saw me do before. And then after that, I'll go around and clean up anything that's, again, what I consider to be kind of modified, if you will. So this will get fixed and cleaned up, which also there are a couple of bare connections here. I don't even like this plug. It's dirty. I'll see what I can do there. So that is the first step, is to basically prep the wires. So I've kind of defined this into 3 steps. Prep the wires, run the wires and secure them, and then modify anything I have to for the trunk lid. There's a couple of things I need to modify for it to fit properly. It's as simple as 3 easy steps, right? I keep telling myself that. All right, here we go.
It's February 25th and it was 82 degrees when I came into the garage. So yeah, I'm wearing shorts. Gotta love Arizona. All right, looks worse than when I started, right? Everything is untaped. I'm gonna rewire or basically rerun the entire thing myself, different than the factory, more than likely. Here's our blue and white wires. These again, this is just an independent harness that comes off, goes to the passenger side, as we talked about. There's a couple of things that are kind of molested. There is this wire here that's stripped back. I took a good look at it. None of the wiring is cut, so I'm just gonna put a piece of heat shrink over the top of this. There's nothing really to solder and I'm good there. This is my biggest issue back here. So I'm gonna see if I have another one of these plugs. Excuse me. If not, I will get this all cleaned up, resolder these ends. If you notice, I just cut it right off. This also allowed me to pull off that, this stuff here, this plastic loom, which is becoming quite brittle, so it's gonna be ineffective anyway. So I'm just gonna test the tape the whole thing. So, all right, so I'll get this thing cleaned up, soldered back on, to where it needs to go, and then clean that other little issue. And then at that point, I can start to run this into where it's gonna go. All right, at this point, what I've done is kind of roughed out the wiring. Before I cut anything or do anything rash, I just want to identify and understand where I'm going to be routing things. I am doing it different than the factory. They had it more coming into this side and then kind of splitting off. I didn't really like that, especially relative to where my plugs are now going to be. So you'll notice here, there is a couple of feet or more on the majority of these wires that I'll be able to trim off. So again, you know, cleaning things up. So some of my wires, my shortest wires are going to come right up to here, which is perfect. Then they'll all go down like this. Here's my blue and white for the trunk latch, the trunk motor. That'll go to the passenger side plug. And then I'll come up with, you know, tie down brackets for all of this. The majority of these wires are going to go into this hole. And we've got things like the trunk latch. And then here is, I just have it kind of sitting in here, the trunk solenoid. But I think that's kind of a clean way to run it. And then my tail lights, this I still have to resolder this end and clean this all up. But again, just kind of roughing it out to see what I've got to work with. And I'll use, once again, some tie down brackets for zip ties. There's not a lot of stress on this. I'll do a screw down along here and then likely one right here. And the rest of it will just be those press on adhesive pieces. So I think that looks good. So now I'm going to resolder that stuff there and then be able to do the proper running of it. This is probably going to be it for the night. I'm going to tap out because it's been a little over 3 hours and I'm pretty beat. It's been a long day. And I'll probably come back either tomorrow night or Thursday and continue on. All right, wires are cleaned up and I did one last, what I call kind of a dry run, just making sure I know where I'm going to route it. Are my lengths good? This is kind of my main junction point, if you will. This, by the way, is how BMW takes a bunch of wires and puts them together. It's a giant solder connection underneath this cap. And you can see again, the way I'm going to run to where my plug will go. I've trimmed this to length. Same is true over here as well with the blue and white. So now what I'll do is unplug it all and then test the tape the entire thing. And for that, I'm going to do the time lapse. I'm curious if you guys want to give me some feedback in the comments. Do you like the time lapse stuff? Or would you rather I just kind of skip over it and say, all right, now it's all taped, here you go. I think it's kind of cool to see that stuff. And someone mentioned that they did like it. And it gives you an appreciation for the level of detail and the kind of time that goes into this kind of build. It is a lot. This whole trunk lid, the cover, the fuel lines, the rewiring, I'm going to be at 200 hours on this part of the project. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and time lapse. So let me know. Thanks, guys. And I realize you might be thinking 200 hours, this guy is super slow. And you're right. I am slow. I take my time. And it never once was a professional installer, although I owned a shop. So with that, let's get going. And there we go. All right, so if you notice, most of the wiring, again, as I planned, kind of tucks up inside of here. I will do some mounting brackets, but first, again, my next step is going to be to put the panel on. I know for sure I need to open up an area in the back side of the panel because this hits and so does this plug, something I did not kind of oversaw that, or if you will, during the design process, but not a big deal. We can fix it. And then I'll get some brackets going on the rest of these wires. And if you notice too, I cut my tape short here just to allow me to go ahead and put my connector on. And then after the connector's on, I'll do a last little piece of tape. Same thing on both sides. So coming along, the next thing I'll do, like I say, I'll get the trunk lid, put it on, identify where it's hitting. It's going to be there, and I may need to open up a little bit in the back side of the panel here, especially once I put a bracket here. This is a big stress point, so I'll make sure I've got a bracket there and plenty of clearance. So with that, let me go ahead and get the panel milled or corrected. All right, panel surgery went well. And again, I show everything, so it's not bad or ugly or whatever, but you can see where I just kind of hogged out that area. I did the same here in the center just to be sure, and I did it there where the other set of wires comes in. And then where the taillight harness plugs in, I have this backer piece of 1/4 inch MDF that I CA glued down, and it was hitting this back side. So I basically cut this, pulled this out, and now I'm good to go. I just checked it, everything fits properly, so we are good there. So the next step is going to be to start getting these harnesses secured and also get the plugs installed for the car, or, the trunk lid side here to be able to plug in. All right, wiring is all secure. You can see for the tail light plugs, I use these factory clips that I just mounted there, and there. So everything's good there. And then coming down here, I screwed in here so you could, this is super solid. This is not going to go anywhere, nor is it going to resonate. And again, I've got all my bases up front. And then I did into this rail here, screw down zip tie bracket here, like every 6 inches. So basically what's left now is to do the 2 plugs, and then the wiring in the trunk lid will be complete. All right, I just realized it's 10 o'clock and I haven't eaten dinner yet. So I'm gonna wrap it up for tonight. And I should be able to come back out tomorrow night, Friday night. And with any luck, I can get everything done that I want to get completed in this video, and I can get the video posted late tomorrow night or Saturday morning. And the trunk lid will be done. So wish me luck. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow. All right, and just like that, it's Friday night, and I'm getting back into it. So the next step is going to be to add the 2 plugs to the trunk lid side, and then get the brackets secured onto the trunk lid. All right, lid panel wiring is done. A couple of things during that time lapse you might have saw. I was fighting with one of the connectors over here. One of my crimps, I had kind of we used to call it a limp crimp, and the wire came out. So I had to re-crimp it. Luckily, the wire wasn't cut, so I was able to just crimp a new end on, therefore maintain all my lengths. So very, very solid. I could lift the trunk lid by this thing. Obviously, also when I put the screws in, the screws are very short, and this is a thick cavity, so obviously I didn't go through the trunk lid. I also added this little bracket here because I've got my metal clip, my tab, you can see my insert there, that I bolt into. So I added this clip just to keep the wire away from that metal tab that comes off of the trunk lid cover. This one's good. This one, notice here where, again, there's these 3 auxiliary wires that I've got coming in, which I haven't accounted for yet. So later when I wire up the lights in the iPad charger, those will come off and I'll have a separate bundle of wire that stuff goes to, thus keeping the OEM stuff and my stuff kind of separated. So Everything is good. I'm really happy with the way everything came out here. The lid panel, the iPad panel fits really nice. It's tight, you know, there's not a ton of gap, but everything fits the way it should. These wires aren't, you know, this doesn't stick up or anything like that. So we're good there. So at this point, I think I'm going to be able to put the trunk lid cover on the car for the last time until I go to upholster everything, at which point it will be coming off for that. But yeah, pretty cool. And this has been a pretty big project, this whole trunk lid thing. And then once the trunk lid is on, I've already done an inventory of all the accessories. I'll go through and test all those to make sure that everything is good with the wiring. I did just double check my pinout to make sure my colors are good. And obviously, as you can see, obviously the colors should match on both sides of the harness. And I checked the pinout assignment on that plug on both sides and the car side. So, all right, moving on from here. Trunk lid is mounted, possibly for almost the last time. Upholstery and paint will be the next 2 times that comes off. I think it looks really good. Again, the wiring, everything is very solid. And in here, I've got everything plugged in, and you can see barely where that wire hangs down on both sides. More on that later. The next thing I need to do, I got out my, I can't see it inside there, but my headlight switch, and we got to go through and test everything. All right, are you guys as nervous as I am? Here we go. Here goes nothing. Testing all the lights. We'll start out with key. Parking lights, there we go. Those are good. Directionals. There's one. There's the other. No need to test hazards because I couldn't find the switch, number 1, and number 2, just the parking lights come on, or the directionals when that happens. Brake lights. We double check, looks like we got all 3. It's a little tricky for me to tell from back here. And then the reverse light. Reverse. There we go. And I can see the license plate lights from here with the parking lights. Those are coming on. We are 100%, guys. Whew! That was a little nerve-wracking, not gonna lie, but we passed. Sorry, one other thing. Central locking system to make sure. So right now the trunk is open. If you guys are not aware, and if you're a young person, you may not be aware of how this works, but in these older BMWs, it's called a central locking system. When you lock the driver's door, everything else in the car locks, including, hopefully, trunk lid. And if you recall, there's a wire going to the fuel door, and that also is locked. So we are 1000%. We unlock, and all 4 doors unlock. Trunk unlocks. Fuel door opens. All right, that's a passing grade. I love it. Okay. Whew. There's a lot of work on this video. It doesn't look a whole lot different than it has in the past, but again, you saw all the work. If you made it this far, thank you very much. You're a dedicated viewer. I appreciate it. The amount of work that went into the wiring, guys, is a lot, and it worked out all very well. Everything tested properly. All of our electronics, you know, all the lights tested fine. So this is going to wrap up this video, but I do have a few loose ends. If you're a dedicated viewer and you want to watch some more stuff, stick around. So kind of wrapping this up, I do still have, there's probably 20 little tweaks that I don't like. And again, I'm a straight shooter, so I'm going to show them to you. I don't like this gap right here. I thought I was going to do this, and I think I'm going to bring this right to this edge and fill this all in. It's actually inconsistent, and I'll probably do it all the way down here. I'm going to tape this up. I'll kitty hair it, reshape it. I might even reprime all these pieces. That's one tweak. And I've got the gap underneath here is too big by even up to like 1/8 of an inch. So I got to close that gap. I want to reshape This here, I want to kind of tweak the way this is shaped. I might even close this gap up a little bit. Just a bunch of, to me, those are like the last little 2% details that make all the difference, right? So I've got a lot to do there. And I do realize that someday I'd like to get the car done. Some of my gaps are still off on my panels. Like this panel for some reason is not fitting properly. I just got it basically mounted in there. So I've got to do some stuff on the, what I call the near wall. Over time, when I've added the fill-ins and I've been doing a lot of work on this thing, as you guys have seen if you've been watching, I've developed I don't know, certainly less than an eighth, but a fat 1/16 of an inch gap here. And you can see the Dynamat. This is going to get carpet and this will get flush cut, but I don't want any risk of seeing Dynamat, so I need to address that. You can see it pretty bad right there. Those are just a little tiny tweaks. These edges, I need to make sure these are good. Some of it I may roll up into a category that I'm calling carpet prep, basically where I go around and make sure everything is perfect before I start upholstering. So, and to that point, I want to show you guys couple of other things too. If you are coming out to the MasterTech Expo, which is going to be in the third week in March, it is now, when you're watching this, it's going to be early March 1st probably. I am doing a get together at my house. So I did it last year. I had some people over, people came, hung out, talked car audio. I don't know, we've probably had 10 or 12 people. And Earl was here and it was a good time. You may have seen that video on the channel. So I'm going to be doing that again. Anyone who is coming out to MasterTech, you're definitely welcome. I don't know what night it'll be yet. I'll probably get some people's opinions and see what people think. So that's one thing. Another thing is I want to show you guys something. You probably hear me talk about these. You know, I got this one Google sheet. It's got 50 tabs on it, and every tab represents something different. I've got an index for all the different stuff in the build. Very, very crazy organized, and this is how I track all my stuff. But I want to show you guys something that I see that kind of keeps me going. One of the things that keeps me motivated, the most important thing, is the feedback and positive vibes I get from people. That is awesome. People saying, hey, this thing, you know, it's amazing that you're bringing it back and it's so awesome. That, believe it or not, for what it's worth, not to sound cheesy, it's very helpful and inspiring. And, you know, here it is again, coming up on 10 o'clock and I still haven't had dinner tonight. So, and I had a crazy work week. So, but another thing I want to show you is this. This is kind of my kind of look at where am I at? What do I need to do still? And here's basically the way I've got this set up. I've got the overall build, right? And I've got my main categories, the trunk, the front fenders, the kick panels are basically, the baffles are done, but I still have a lot of work to do on the fenders. The interior of the car, all the OEM stuff, the rear deck, all of that. And then building the dash, the new dash. Still a lot to do in terms of figuring things out. That's going to be a bunch of testing. Am I going to motorize the pods like Henry did, or just build a whole new dash? And then I have the mechanical aspects of the car in the exterior, which includes full paint, wheels, all that. These four things are my North Star, right? When I get these four things done, I can sit in the car and listen to it. Now, what I've done furthermore is I've kind of expanded these out. So in the trunk, here's basically what I've got. I'm calling it parts to build, which is going to be kind of where I'm at right now. That's the phase I'm in. So that's going to include the trunk lid, which is now done. Then I have four remaining main things in the trunk, which is going to be what I call the car floor. Let's go over and show you real quick. The car floor is going to be the area underneath this pull floor. This is what I call the pull floor. So, and this is, again, if you've been following along, just a template. But the car floor is basically this whole area. So that's one thing. The second is the spare tire area, getting a new spare, some other things to come on that. And then finalizing this floor, which will be made of aluminum, and likely going to motorize that and just have it kind of hinge and lift up. And then the fourth thing is something I don't know if I've told many people, even Earl, about. I want to build what I'm calling the luggage wall. It's going to be just relatively simple, just a flat wall that goes across vertically, utilizing that lip as a mounting point, and then some mounting points up in the rear deck. And it's just a wall that will be carpeted, made of aluminum. And when I do bring the car on tour, drive it around, I want to be able to have luggage in the car and not obviously have anything happen with the electronics and millbirds and all that. So those are the 4 things left on the dash, or excuse me, on the trunk. As far as the, you know, the kind of the main things to build. Then additional categories I still have in the trunk would be, so that's going to be parts to build. That's those 4. Then I have what I'm calling upholstery prep. That's all the tweaking that I need to do before I, you know, such that I'm ready to upholster. Cooling, I'm looking into doing liquid cooling. All of the lighting, I'm going to be doing the dichroic lenses like Earl did. This is all just in the trunk still. Then the upholstery. Then it's actually going to be wrapping in an upholstery. And then the hanging rack is all the 2 Zapco amps, those spacers, all the Sony electronics that are hanging from the rear deck. There's a lot to do there. Recapping the electronics, powder coating the amplifiers. There's quite a bit. A bunch of aluminum metal work. As far as my son-in-law, he's going to be doing some welding to weld studs into the Zapcos, so on and so forth. The millbird floor, that's basically getting everything done that's mounted to the zebra wood, including the zebra wood itself. Staining, doing a poly, getting the millbirds. There's a decent amount of work still to do to the millbirds that I want to do. And then all the gold plating. May do that myself. I may farm it out. It's extremely expensive, but that's a whole thing in and of itself. Then wiring in the trunk, and then the final assembly of the trunk. So those are the things still. I'm at 1,070 hours right now in the trunk, and I still have all that stuff to go. But I know it's going to be worth it, right? So, all right, let me just double check my notes here. I want to make sure I covered everything. Oh, a couple of other quick things. Again, what do you guys think of like the level of detail? I feel like on this video, I went really methodically through a lot of detail. I showed you just about everything I did, and I did a lot of the time lapse. What are your thoughts on that? Is that good for you, or would you rather me speed things up and again, just be like, all right, I was going to do this thing, now I did it, and here it is, it's done. And I don't mind having the videos long. This one's probably going to end up being 45 minutes, give or take, but some of mine have been over an hour. So let me know your thoughts there. So, and do you want to see me do all these little tweaks that I'm talking about? If you do, just, you know, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, that stuff's just kind of busy work, and it's a lot of the same kind of things that you've seen me do before. But again, it gives you an idea. It's probably 30 hours of work. So it's a good amount of work, and it's probably going to not, you know, from here, it's going to look no different than it does right now. But it's just those little details that when this thing is complete and somebody looks at it, that'll be the difference between a good build and a great build in my eyes. So the final look of the fuel line trunk arms, I think is, I could not be happier with the way that these came out. Very happy with the decision I made to flare the ends as well. And then looking at it again up underneath the rear deck, imagine that's all upholstered. Oh, one other question. Here's an opinion thing for you. If you recall in this video, I wrapped this harness in just the black cloth tested tape. I have some different looms that I looked at. None of them I like to be able to cover that up with. This is all going to be a tan carpet, and even inside of here, this whole area will be tan carpet. I'm actually thinking about just getting tan spray paint and spray painting that cloth tape and just basically finishing it that way. I think, you know, the objective there is just kind of hide it. I want it to be visible so that people can see, because you can see right here, there's the flare on the fuel line. And I don't want to hide details like that because it came out good. It's clean, it's proper, it's not going to get pinched. And a lot of people just kind of hide stuff. I want to show my work and be able to see things like that. So anyway, let me know your thoughts if you would, please. I know I'm rambling, it's late, I'm super tired, but that's going to be it for this video. Thanks once again for watching. If you have not already, please like and subscribe, and I will see you all soon. Thanks again, take care.